And our first storyteller's secret fact is that when she was little, she had a pet rock, as in like a rock that she drew a face on and that she would carry around with her. And I said, oh, did it have a name? And she was like, Pet Rock. Please welcome Allyson Reid.
Great. Come to the Garrison, she said. It'll be fun, she said. You won't be able to see a thing, she said. So it's the 80s, and I'm 19. And I'm stepping in the front door of my parents' house. They live way the heck out in the country, and I haven't been there in weeks. And my dad is standing at the end of the hall, and he's not at this stage of life. He's not really a huggy kind of guy, so he just sort of stands there and says, how's school going? And I breathe, and I smile, and I say, great! Yeah, everything's great. It was so far from great. Things were a bit of a disaster. So believe it or not, in high school I was actually smart, but there I found myself in the first semester of university, and I didn't have a clue what anybody was saying. It was horrible. But what I did have was what I thought was my look, my fashion statement. And I thought if I looked put together, nobody would know what was going on the inside. And I thought I was really preppy. So I'll set the scene for you. I had saved up for, this is the 80s, keep in mind, I had saved up for Baswegian shoes, you know, the burgundy ones that had the little tassels on the end. And I had these off-white, sort of ivory dress pants with really wide legs. Actually, let's not call them dress pants, they're more like slacks. And they had those side pockets in the 80s that were sort of on a great slant, and the pockets were really deep. And I had all these pleats at the front. And then I had a matching button-up or button-down collar shirt, which of course was done up to the top button. And then I had a blazer. Hello. Then I had this navy linen blazer with shoulder pads. And then I did what a lot of girls did at that time. We took these Indian scarves and we folded them in half to make like a big triangle and then tied it around our neck like a bib. But what really sort of grounded me and made me feel like a somebody was that I had that quintessential 1980s Canadian look. I had a spiral perm. Yeah. Now, despite this look I had going on, the perm was it was a summer perm, and it was sort of losing its oomph. And the actual fact was I was on academic probation. So here I was at home, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I was petrified that A, my parents were going to find out, B, they were going to find out and be disappointed in me, or C, I was going to be in so much trouble. So I did then what any responsible 19-year-old would do. I called my hairdresser in Belleville and made an appointment to fix the hair. So my mom asked me, do you want some lunch? She's a kind lady, and I said, oh no, I'm really busy. I'm going to get my hair done. It's okay. And she was letting me borrow her car, which I had done so many times before. My parents really trusted me, and I knew that. And so as I held out my hand, and she gave me the keys, and they fell into my hand, it felt like it had so many times before. It felt like freedom. Are you going to wear a coat? Yeah, Mom, I'm totally going to wear a coat. No, I was not going to wear a coat. It would wreck the look. So my Saturday kind of casual outfit was a little different than my power outfit, and at 19. And so I had swapped out the Baswegians for swapped out the Basswegians for my Cherokee loafers. And I had decided on really thick acid wash jeans. And then I had a really bright, fleecy sweatshirt that actually I got from a birthday party, and my friends had put their handprints all over it and drawn colored squiggles. And then I had this little Gucci purse that I got on duty free on an airplane somewhere, and I thought that really set off the look. So I glanced at myself in my sagging summer perm. I took one last look in that hall mirror, and I was off. Now, my mom's car was quite something. It was a beige Pontiac Sunbird. And it was as boxy as my blazer. So I'm heading out to the car, and I'm sitting in the seats. And the seats, actually, one of the features of that car was they had these really tall front seats. So it sort of was like a throne. And I'd drive along through town, hello, waving at people, like I was a princess on this throne. So I'm in the car, and I reach into my Gucci purse, and I pull out my favorite cassette, because the car had a tape player. I pulled out my favorite cassette, and it was The Doors' Greatest Hits. So I turn on the ignition, and I put in the cassette, and the music starts, and I'm in heaven. So I turn on the wipers, and I'm off down the road. I'm bombing along. And I don't know if anybody else does this, but if there's a song playing in the car that's fast, I drive quickly. And if there's a song that's sort of melancholy or slow, I kind of slow down, just sort of meander. Anywho, so I'm driving along, and by this point I'm at Concessions 5. I don't know if anyone's ever been there. It goes right through Corbyville. Oh my God, you're nodding. So, so I'm on Concession 5. And it's this paved road with no line down the middle, because why bother? And at the edge of the road, there's this sort of soft shoulder. I don't know, we're not very fancy in the country. We don't have enough pavement to go all the way. And it's sort of gravel and dirt and stuff. It's called a soft shoulder anyway. So driving along, and there's houses of kids I used to go to public school with. And there's my little primary school. There's a couple of barns. And every so often, there's sort of like a 6 or 7 foot drop off the edge of the road as you drive along. And then it's sort of the grass sort of goes off into sort of scruffy shrubs and swampy area and whatnot. So as I'm driving along, I'm singing, and I am so happy because I have really forgotten about my academic troubles. And the song in the song in the cassette player gets to the next one, and it's my favorite song. And I hear those opening 2 bars, and it's do 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 do, and it's Break On Through. And Jim and I are singing a duet, and it is fantastic. So I'm bombing along, and I'm singing, and the needle is going up, and I really have no clue how fast I'm going, but it doesn't matter because Jim and I are on a highway to freedom. Doesn't matter. So I'm coming up over the hill, just before the railway tracks. And I'm coming up the top of the hill, and I get that woo feeling. When you go over a bump really fast and your stomach does that flip-flop? Well, that happened. So I'm going up to the top of the hill, and the woo happens. And I'm going fairly quickly, and I look down, and at the bottom of the hill is a calico cat. And he's standing by the side of the road, and he's not looking at my car. More to the fact, he's sort of sauntering out right into the path of my vehicle. And I had been driving for a few years at this point, and I'd always been taught by my grandparents, my parents, if something steps out at you when you're driving along the road and it's below your knees, you hit it. Just smuck it. It is not worth hurting yourself or the car. Just hit it. Well, I can assure you, in this traffic moment, that helpful little tip was absolutely unavailable to me. So Jim continued singing on his own, and I slammed on the brakes on the very wet pavement. The whole arse end of Mum's car swung around, with some pretty good torque, I may say, to the other side of the road. So I'm turning the wheel and I'm trying to right it, and the whole car turns around and swings over to the other side of the road. At this stage, I lost it, and the front tire shot off the end of the pavement and sort of burrowed itself into the stupid soft shoulder. Now, I don't know. I'm using my grade 11 physics here. I'm just guessing this is what happened. But, with the speed and the weight of the car, I'm thinking it wasn't that happy to sort of stop on a dime like that. So the back end of the car flipped up and over, and I left the road entirely. So I'm hanging on, and it's totally quiet. And I'm rolling, and I see grass, sky, grass, sky, grass, sky. And then the car comes to a stop. It sort of shudders. And I'm hanging inside the car, upside down, from my seatbelt. And I'm looking around, and I can't see out the front windshield anymore because it's completely broken. And I look around, and there's broken glass everywhere. And the sides of the car had come down, smooshed, and they were now resting on my throne seat. So I breathed. And honestly, my very first thought was, I am in so much trouble. And then my next thought was, oh my God, the fire truck is going to show up. They're going to come down here with the jaws of life to get me out, and everyone's going to be disappointed in me, and then they're all going to look at my hair. So I'm hanging upside down, and I'm really trying to get this seatbelt undone now. And as I'm working away at this stupid seatbelt, I hear this little voice from behind me. Hello? I'm like, what is that? So I'm upside down. And I turn around, and I peer around the edge of my throne seat, and right through the back of the car, it's all smooshed, but right through the back of the car, I can see through the open space that used to be the back window, I can see this little woman, and she's got these big glasses on. And I can just see her head and her feet. She's sort of looking at me, and I'm looking at her. She says, "Are you okay?" So I breathe. And I smile. And I say, "Great! Yeah, everything's great!" She said, "Well, can you get out of there?" And I don't know if it was just her demeanor. She was so kind-seeming. All of a sudden, it was like a light bulb. Oh my God, it's gravity. That's why the seatbelt won't work. So I'm pushing with one hand, and I'm undoing the seatbelt with the other, and then gravity threw me onto the ground next to the dash. That was fantastic. And I uncurled myself, and I didn't know what to do, so I start crawling towards the little lady with the glasses. And I may say the acid-wash jeans that I had chosen earlier were the perfect fashion statement, because I didn't feel that broken glass at all, just for the record. And I see that my purse has been flung into the back seat, so I take that and I put it over my shoulder, and I'm still crawling. And I'm at the back thing that used to be the back window, and I shimmy out, and the lady was so sweet. She put her little arm around me, and she said, "Well, I said to my husband, 1 second she was on the road, and the next second she wasn't." She said, "Now, he's gone to get some help. Is there anybody that we should call?" And I was just, I was kind of like, what just happened? And I was sort of thinking out loud, so I said, "Well, yeah, Grandma and Grandpa just live up on the corner there, but we don't have to call them. We don't have to bother them." Now, we all know the reason I didn't want to bother them was because I thought they were going to tell my parents what I had done, and I didn't want that to happen. Somehow, in my youthful mind, that mangled car that I was now too afraid to look at was somehow going to fix itself, and nobody was going to notice. So myself and Glasses Lady were, trying to help each other up the embankment. And I look, and we're on the road, and an ambulance has showed up. And I'm absolutely mortified. And around comes this really handsome young guy. And I'm feeling like a complete loser. So he takes me to the back of the ambulance, and the doors are already open. He's ready, and he sits me down on the back bumper. And as I sit there, I'm just hit with this complete and utter mortification. And he's asking me these questions, and he's poking my arms, and he's poking my ribs, and he's like, "Are you sure you're okay?" "Yeah, I think I'm okay." "Yeah." And he's poking, and and I don't know what it was that I said. But he finally bloody took my word for it and realized I did not have a concussion. So he happily announced that I was done and I was okay, and I could now go speak to the officer. The officer, a police officer, had arrived in a cruiser. And he walked around the corner of the ambulance, and I don't know what it was. It was this tall guy in a uniform, man of authority, the gray hair, the whole bit. And all I felt was cold panic. My face went numb. My hands went numb. All I could think of was, I'm going to prison. So he led me over to the cruiser, and he very politely opened the back door so I could crawl in. And he went around to the front and sat in the driver's side, and he's looking at me in his rearview mirror. And there was something about settling into that back seat, and I felt that cold, fake leather of the back seat in the cruiser, and I lost it. I started to cry. It wasn't that sort of elegant, silent cry. And I didn't go the other way. Like, it wasn't like a wailing, over-the-top cry. I sort of fell somewhere in the middle. And I did that thing, that sometimes it's stereotypically adolescent and kind of female, where we sort of hiccup. So it was kind of like... So he's asking me all of these technical questions, and he's writing things down in his notebook. Writing. And he asked me, what happened? It was a cat. And I could not hit it. More writing. And then there was this long pause, and he was about to ask what I didn't know was his final question. So I'm sitting in the back, and I'm covered in tears, and I'm waiting, and I hear the click, 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 click of his hazard lights, and the thwap, thwap, thwap of the wipers and his pen scratching on the paper. And he looks at me in that rearview mirror, and he looked into my soul. And he says, "So how fast were you going?" What was I going to do? What was I going to do? What was I going to say? He knows I was speaking. I'm going to jail. And I might even be fined. So in that moment of panic, I just tell the truth. What could you do? I don't know. I was driving, and I was singing, and it was a fast song. I kind of really don't know. And I've lost it by this point, and I'm mopping up my tears with my fleecy sleeves. And I look up, and the corners of his eyes are sort of squinching, and his apples of his cheeks have risen up. And he's smiling. And he says, your insurance is going to go up. And in that moment, I knew he wasn't going to handcuff me. I wasn't going to have to figure out how to accessorize my prison uniform. I was free to go. So I was just hit with this complete and total gratitude and absolute exhaustion. And I sort of got out of the back seat, and I shut the door, and I heard this bub, 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 bub. And I looked, and there's this truck, like this old school tow truck on a flatbed, and there's my mom's smushed car on top of it, tied to the tow truck. And then beside that was my dad. And he's standing there, and he's 6'2", and he's not smiling. I am in so much trouble. So he walks towards me, and he's looking at the car, and he's looking at me, and he asks that really popular question of the day, "Are you okay?" And I breathe, and I smile, and I say, "Yeah!" And I couldn't hold it. "But what about my perm?" And he stares at me with this sort of disbelief and deep thought. And then he throws his arms up in the air, and he says, "Well, I guess I'll have to drive you." So we go over and we get in his car. And we're driving along in complete and total silence. Now, we weren't a huggy family at that stage, so you get to pick up the vibes, good vibes, bad vibes. So we're driving along, and somehow in that silence, I sensed that he and I were both just so happy that I was alive. And I was so relieved to be getting a fresh perm.
Allyson Reid.